Welcome everyone to the Municipality of Thames Center regular council meeting, Monday, February 14th, 2022 at 1 p.m. Happy Valentine's Day to all that applies to. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And are there any additions to the agenda?
There was one addition, item 10.1 under unfinished business. The planning report was added. It was just missed. It was the same report that was considered at the November 8th council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any disclosure or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, moving on to announcements. Any announcements, council? Yep. Deputy Mayor Elliott.
Yes, through your worship, it just dawned on me that I should announce the Women's Caucus of Middlesex County Council is hosting an election school with the upcoming municipal election. On our program will be our own CAO talking about roles and responsibilities of municipal councils, as well as we'll have deputy clerks from Strathroy Caradoc talking about the election process, campaign manager, as well as some elected officials. So it's a great opportunity for anyone looking to run in the upcoming election, and that will be held on Saturday, March 26th in Kamoka at the Wellness Center.
Great, and I think there is opportunities for babysitting in transit with that too, isn't there? Yeah. All right, thank you. Now we're going to move into a public meeting. So we have a motion that council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as a court of revision under the Drainage Act to consider the Judge Drain Branch F 2021. And looking for a mover, Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? So carried. So now I'm going to hand it over to our drainage inspector.
Thank you, Your Worship. After mailing out and to all owners impacted regarding the assessments, we have no appeals at this time, and we can carry on with the meeting from here.
Okay. Any questions from the members of the Court of Revision regarding this drain? Okay. I guess we're deliberating. And now we're looking at a decision, which is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Judge Drain Branch F 2021, no appeals being submitted, adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated October 28th, 2021, as submitted by Mike DeVos of Spreet Associates. So we're looking for mover, Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay, and now looking for a motion that the Court of Revision be closed in order for council to convene a public meeting under Section 12 of the Development Charges Act. Mover, Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. And now we are into 6.1, Development Charges Public Meeting. So going to now go into the purpose of this public meeting is to present the proposed development charges background study and development charges bylaw. Notice of this meeting was given on January 19th. I'm going to ask Ms. Neal of Watson and Associates to present the proposed development charges background study. And welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council and staff and the public. I am going to take you through a brief presentation. I wasn't sure, I know the clerk has been sent the proposal or the presentation. If you are going to share your screen with that, or if you want me to share my screen, whatever works best on your side.
Hi, Nancy. You can share your screen.
Okay. All right, let me just get this loaded up then. Can you let me know if you can see it?
All is well.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to step you through a high-level summary today of the development charges background study that was put together and released. Thank you for your opening remarks on it. This is a formal public meeting, so we are going to go through and summarize some of the policies and the calculated charges, give you a comparison of charges with other municipalities surrounding you, and talk about next steps. At the end of my presentation, I'd be happy to answer any questions from council or the public before we formally conclude the public meeting. So the public meeting is to provide a review of the proposed charges and policies that the town or the municipality is looking at putting in place for a new development charge bylaw. It is a mandatory requirement for the municipality to have this public meeting. And there is the requirement that the background study had to be prepared and released at least 60 days prior to when you will consider passage of the bylaw. So that will not be today. The purpose of development charges is to recover capital costs associated with both residential and non-residential growth in the municipality. They are costs that are in addition to what we call local services that the developers do as part of their development agreements, whether that's a site plan agreement or a subdivision agreement. So they typically put, internal roads, water and sewer mains into the subdivisions or adjacent to their developments, sidewalks, streetlights, that type of thing. So really the development charge is meant to encapsulate projects that have a broader benefit than to just the immediate development that is being put in place. You are empowered to use the Development Charges Act as much as possible. So there are rules that in the Municipal Act that state that if you can use the DC to recover capital costs, then you should be using the DC instead of using other types of charges through the Municipal Act. There's a long history of development charges here in Ontario. Prior to 1989, they used to be collected under the Planning Act and were called lot levies. In 1989, the first act was put in place. There was a major overhaul to it in 1997. And since then, there have been recent changes. There was Bill 73 in January of 2016 that came into effect. And then over the last couple of years, there's actually been extensive discussions and refinements to both the Development Charges Act and Planning Act when it comes to how municipalities can recover for growth-related costs. So there was 4 acts that were introduced. Not all of the requirements of Bill 108 were actually put in place at the end of the day, but some of the rules and that now apply were put in place through Bill 108. As well, Bill 138 refined some of the original anticipated changes that Bill 108 identified. Bill 190 really was what put most of the changes in place that we are dealing with through this background study. And then Bill 213 was actually introduced December of 2020, and it changed it. It actually provided a exemption, a mandatory exemption now for universities that require or that receive public funds from either the provincial or federal levels of government. So it didn't actually change the Development Charges Act. It was through the Universities and Colleges Act that mandatory development charge exemption was put in place. As mentioned, the most recent changes, we have had to embrace them in the DC background study and in the draft bylaw. They include changes, probably the most significant changes, to the timing and collection of when development charges take place. In the past, they used to be collected and calculated on the day of building permit issuance. That is still the case for most types of development, but has been changed slightly for certain types of developments or redevelopments. Bill 138 actually removed from Bill 108 the requirement to make installments of DCs for commercial and industrial. It did, however, leave in the installment payments that are new for other types of developments, so residential and institutional in some cases. As well, as I mentioned, Bill 197 is the piece of legislation that made the most significant changes, and I'll get into what those are. And Bill 213 was that university credit. So as part of Bill 108 and Bill 138, there's now a requirement that for rental housing and institutional developments, instead of paying at the time of building permit issuance, they will pay their DCs in 6 equal annual installments. And the first installment actually takes place when the occupancy permit is issued instead of the building permit. And then annually from that date of occupancy every year for the next 5 years thereafter. For nonprofit housing, similar rules. The first payment is due at the time of occupancy. And then for the next 20 years on that anniversary date, the balance of the installments are made. Now, there's also a new rule that if you are applying for a site plan application or a zoning amendment application, the rate that is in effect on the day that the application is made is the rate that the developer would pay as long as the building permit is issued within 2 years from the date that application is approved by the municipality. So the rate's frozen at the date of application. There's a time period then between application and approval of that site plan or zoning amendment. And then from that approval date, they've got 2 years and they will still pay the rate in effect as of the application date. Now, with all of the installment payments and or the date of DC freeze, you can charge interest on those charges. With Bill 197, the list of eligible services that were actually going to be removed out of the development charge through Bill 108 changed, and the majority of services got put back into the development charge. For yourselves, other than a few studies that you used to collect for in the past, everything else that you were collecting for previously remains eligible for the development charge calculations. There was also the removal of the 10% mandatory deduction that used to take place for what we considered soft services, for things like parks, recreation, library. In the past, there was, at the end of the calculations, a 10% deduction we had to do that you had to then fund from other sources. So that has now been removed, and that helps the municipality collect closer to 100% of what the growth-related costs are. As well, the Planning Act actually introduced a new charge called a community benefits charge, and it can be imposed, but only on high-density developments that have a minimum of 5 stories and 10 residential units or more. So it's very limited as to the types of developments that can have that charge imposed on it. And it is based it's based on a percentage of the land value the day before building permit issuance, up to a maximum of 4% of that land value. Most of the municipalities putting those types of charges are experiencing increasingly high density and redevelopment because they've run out of green space to build. So a lot of the GTA municipalities are now starting to look at embracing a community benefit charge as well. That is not something at this time that staff felt that they needed to review for Thames Center. The DC eligible services that are now included in the DC are listed here. And what I've done is I've highlighted in blue the services that we've actually included in your development charge. So again, water, wastewater, library, parks and rec, waste diversion, fire, and of course, services related to a highway is your roads and related infrastructure. As well, growth studies are eligible as long as they provide input into one of the or the needs that one of these eligible services or more of them provide for. And then the other area that is now considered a class of service is actually your public works fleet and facility, because they again relate to the services that are eligible, your water, your wastewater, your parks operations, and your roads. As a high-level overview to what we go through to come up with the calculated rates, we have to first identify the amount, type, and location of growth in the municipality. We then look at how what the servicing needs are. So for example, you may need to expand water capacity at a plant. From that need, we then work with staff and identify the capital project or projects to provide for that increased need for service. So again, if you needed additional water supply, it may mean expansion of the capacity that you get from a well or a river. So there's different capital projects that you could identify to meet those servicing needs that have been identified. We come up with those capital costs for those projects, and then we have to actually do some deductions. So if you know of any grants, subsidies, or other contributions that are being made towards those expanded projects, those have to be deducted. Of course, we always have to turn our mind to whether or not there's a benefit to existing. For an example with that, if you were demolishing a 5,000 square foot fire department station and building a 10,000 square foot facility, the first 5,000 square feet obviously is a replacement and benefits the existing development. So we would deduct 50% of that project. Anything that is in excess of the historic service standard, we do for most services other than water and wastewater, have to measure what you've been providing the municipality on average over the last 10 years. And we can only collect going forward for that maximum amount. So you may need more capital than what that historic service standard provides you, but that provides us with a mathematical cap on what we can include in the calculations. And then where applicable, if you've been collecting for these services in the past and you have reserve money already collected from prior growth, we would deduct that out of the calculations to ensure that at the end of the day, you're not collecting more than what is necessary from all of the growth. We then come down to our net costs and we divide that into the benefit that the residential growth versus the non-residential growth would have. And then we divide those amounts back into that amount of growth identified in item 1 to come up with our charges. So high level, the cost of that growth divided by the growth is really what gives us our charges. For residential, we look at it on a cost per capita basis, and then we multiply that cost per capita by average persons per unit in different types of residential units. For example, a single family home versus a townhouse versus an apartment building. For the non-residential, we take those costs and we divide it by the total square footage that is anticipated to be built in the non-residential sector over the forecast period, and we come up with a cost per square foot. There is a direct relationship between the costs of growth and both the development community and the existing community. Wherever there are needs that need to be put in place, there's very limited revenue sources the municipality has. So if you cannot collect it or choose not to put it in place through development charges, then really you have to come up with funding from taxes, water, wastewater rates, existing reserves, or other sources to make up that cost, or alternatively, I guess, not provide the additional services for growth, which reduces the standards you've been providing over the forecast period. Our study timelines, we started meeting with staff last summer, worked through to the end of the year to really go through all of the details of the capital needs, developing the growth forecast, looking at the policies and where augmented things had to be worked into your bylaw, discussions regarding indexing of the DCs, interest rates on that DC freeze and or the installment payments, as well as any discounts or exemptions. All took place really through July and December of last year. We did release the background study publicly on December 27th. Today is our public meeting, and we are back on March 7th for your consideration of the bylaw. The growth forecast, at least the residential housing growth forecast that we're looking at, is quite high for the next few years. However, based on information through your planning department, you are seeing an uptick in applications coming in. So although you've been on average over, the last 10 years, been just over 60 units a year, there is an anticipation that you're going to see quite a bit more growth over the next 4 years and even into the 10-year forecast period. And then after that, we anticipate it will step down over time. What that means is over the next 10 years, we're anticipating a net population increase of just under 3,800 people, and they would be housed in just under 1,500 residential units. As well, the non-residential growth, and we're anticipating just over 770,000 square feet of additional institutional, industrial, and commercial businesses. Over a longer period of time, looking out 25 years, that net population increases to 7,090 in 2,700 units and about 1.2 million square feet of non-residential growth. When we look at the urban build out, which is going out quite a bit further, and that's really your water and wastewater serviced areas, we look out to the urban, the build out of the plant capacity that will be in the projects once they are put in place. And that provides you with just over 8,000 people over a longer period of time in just under 3,000 units. And the non-residential growth anticipated right now over that period is just over 900,000 square feet. Now, I will point out that right now the non-residential lands that are along the 401 corridor are not serviced with water or wastewater, and in this forecast, they're not anticipated to be. And that's why the non-residential square footage for that urban serviced area is lower actually than what is anticipated over the 25-year when we're looking municipal wide. So the municipal wide services are those services related to a highway, the public works, facilities and fleet, fire, parks and rec, waste diversion, and growth studies. Again, on the water and wastewater side, we only look at applying those to the urban serviced areas that will receive those services over our forecasted period. There are mandatory exemptions. Some of them have all been there for years, others are new. For industrial building expansions, there has been a mandatory exemption for many years that you can increase one time up to 50% of your existing footprint and not have to pay the development charge on that. As well, if the county or any of the school boards were going to build in your municipality, you wouldn't impose your development charge on them. If they have development charges, which they can, they wouldn't charge their charges on you if you were building a new facility either. And then the balance of the mandatory exemptions are really related to residential intensification. So in an existing dwelling, if you have a single family home, you can add up to 2 apartments. And as long as you're not more than doubling the size of the existing home, those apartments would be exempt from paying development charges. Any other type of existing residential home, you can add 1 additional unit without having to pay the development charge. The new area that I've added in here in blue is also providing exemptions now at the time of a new build. So if you are building a new single family home and you have with that an apartment anticipated in the basement, over your garage, on a 2nd floor or 3rd floor, for example, it would be automatically exempt now as well, but only 1 unit. There's also now an exemption if you add what they're calling an ancillary unit. So this could be something such as a granny flat. If you have a detached garage, there could be an apartment over top of that garage. So this new build exemption, you don't have to have the unit actually within the single family home or townhouse or semi-detached home or apartment building. It can be on the same property, but separated from the new main building. And then, as mentioned, universities that receive operating funds from the government are now mandatorily exempt as well.
Nancy, I think we have a question from one of the counselors. Yep.
Sure, I can't see everyone.
Yeah, I know. It's hard when you're screen sharing because you can't see everything. So if you don't mind, I'll just quietly interrupt you every now and then. So
Sure.
Councillor Heeman, go ahead.
So for the accessory and ancillary dwellings, was that one or both are exempt?
Just the ancillary units. So if you're building a single family home, then you still would pay that development charge. But if you're also putting an ancillary unit in at the same time, you would not be paying the second for the second unit or that ancillary unit.
Nancy, if I can help clarify, I think Councillor Heeman is asking, because you're saying dwellings are optional of 2 above, if they're an existing dwelling, so you can have 2 other units, are they both exempt BC?
Sorry, yes, through the chair. Yes, if it's an existing building and you're adding, or if it's an existing single family home, then yes, you can add 2 apartment buildings without having to pay for either of those 2 units. Every other type of existing build or new build only gets 1 additional unit exempt. Does that help? I see Councillor Patterson has his hand up too, I believe.
Yep, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Work. These mandatory exemptions, who's legislating this? What level of government? Is it us, or is it the province, or is it the federal?
Through the chair, it's the province because the Development Charges Act is a provincial act. So it's the province that's mandatorily putting these exemptions in place. And therefore, any types of developments with these, you basically have to make up that difference because you're not collecting it through the development charges. And that's the component that is still then hitting the taxpayer or ratepayer in your municipality. The new portion was really to try and help with the affordable housing initiatives that the province has. That's why that was put in place this year. Or well, a couple of years ago now. Any other questions before I move on?
See any? Go ahead.
Okay. So in addition to any mandatory exemptions, every council has the ability to provide additional, what we call discretionary exemptions. And that's really what makes your bylaw a made in Thames Centre bylaw. Currently, right, we're anticipating a full exemption for public hospitals. A college, not just the university, was mandatory, but if a college of applied arts and technology were to come to Thames Centre, that would be exempt. A place of worship, as well as non-residential bona fide farm buildings. Now, those have been in your DC bylaw in the past. We're assuming they will move forward. One of the things that we are suggesting and recommending to change this time is, in the past, industrial development was exempt from all services being collected for under the DC. However, there are significant amounts of works that have to be put in place over the forecast period for water and wastewater. And therefore, it's being recommended that going forward, industrial developments only get exempt from the municipal-wide services, and that they actually contribute going forward to the needs for water and wastewater expansion. As well, there's a redevelopment policy that states that if you demolish your home, you have a certain amount of time, 5 years, to replace that home without having to pay a development charge. And that continues from previous bylaws as well that you've had. The calculated charges, as I was mentioning, for residential, we vary the charges by the type of residential based on those average persons per unit. So for single and semi-detached homes that are on full urban services, the charges would be $37,322. For other multiples, such as townhouses or other row dwellings, the charge is $24,340. Apartments, we vary them by size, 1 bedroom and bachelor versus 2 bedrooms or more. So they are $23,231 and $14,642. And then there's also a category for nursing home based on a per unit or bedroom unit basis. And that recognizes that typically there's 1.1 persons per unit in nursing home units. So they're given a reduced rate as well of $12,594. Then for that industrial, commercial, institutional development, the full charge is $1,451. For industrial, based on the discussion we were just having about starting to impose, they would only be paying the $1,165, which is the water wastewater component, versus the full $1,451. So they'd be exempt still from this $2.86 a square foot. That is related to the municipal-wide services. What that means, and keep in mind, we released the study in 2021 in December, so everything is stated in 2021 dollars at the moment. How that compares to what you had in place in 2021, really, there's, on the municipal-wide, there's a slight reduction in the charge going forward. On the water and wastewater side, there is an increase. Again, there's a lot of significant work that's been identified now through your water and wastewater master plan that was completed and approved last year. So overall, there's an increase, but again, the municipal wide component of it is slightly reducing. On the non-residential side, again, there's a reduction on the municipal wide services and an increase on the water and wastewater services based on those programs required. So you're going up from $1,351 to $1,451 for per square foot for anyone that is on full water wastewater services. Again, the industrial would only be paying the $1,165. Where that ranks you in other municipalities that are in the area or of similar size to yourselves, you're really for residential single-family home. There's a slight increase over where you currently are, but you are still mid-pack as you have been in the past to a lot of the other developing areas around you. On the non-residential side for commercial, again, slight change from where you were positioned previously. And then on the industrial side, again, not far off of where you were in the past. So our next steps, obviously, we want to consider any public comments from council in this prior to your consideration of the bylaw on March 7th. So if there's any questions now of council or the public, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, well, thank you, Nancy. I'm just going to wait and see if there's any questions. And Councillor Heeman has one.
I was just wondering on the impact of those rate increases for water and wastewater, how that might flow back to our rate study. I know some of these things go hand in hand. Would there be any impact on our funding of our water and wastewater plans?
Yeah, through the chair. There would be savings on rate increases in the future that would be needed because you'd start collecting from that industrial development as well. So now that you would have another funding source, where in the past your rates were reflected of the fact that you weren't getting any contribution from industrial development towards those growth related projects, those were made up from rate increases that were anticipated in the future. So there would be some savings there on your rate side.
That's music to my ears.
Okay, any other questions, council? Councillor Patterson?
I'm trying to understand how the municipal wide development charges in this proposed bylaw will not apply to industrial development other than the wastewater and water. But I would think that fire protection services, waste diversion, like, why doesn't that apply to industrial land? I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah, through the chair, they do apply. In the past, you have, your council has opted to exempt industrial from paying any of the development charge components. Staff felt that at a minimum for this round of development charges, they would recommend at least collecting the water and wastewater components because there are significant costs that you are looking at over the next few years. That's not to say that they don't benefit from the additional growth related costs for all of the other services, because they do. And it is up to this council to choose whether or not to still exempt them from those additional municipal wide services or not. We just working with staff because it was a change. There was, concern that going from 0 to hero for the full charge might be not something that council would be willing to consider. But again, you can consider that if you want to.
Any other questions?
Just to follow up, I think that's part of our economic development initiative to recruit industrial businesses to the municipality. But I think as we look at positioning ourselves to the City of London, those water and wastewater services are something that we might want to look at.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Nancy, that's 6 months of work down to about 20 minutes of presentation, so good on you. And it was a fairly concise and clear presentation. Thank you very much. And we'll proceed on with the rest of the meeting.
All right,
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you're welcome.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask our Director of Planning to provide any comments received from interested persons.
Your worship,
through the posting of the notice for the development charges background study, the only comment that we received from the public was from a Gary McMillan. And Mr. McMillan expressed concern about the new stipulation in the legislation, which allows for the deferral of development charges in dealing with rental housing. And specifically, if there's a change in tenure after the fact, even though installments are still due for the payment of the DC, to ensure that there are no monies lost that would have been otherwise collected by the municipality. And Ms. Neal has pointed out that the way the legislation is worded, there's a specific section that deals with situations such as that, in that if there's a change in that type of development, going from rental housing to, freehold ownership of units, let's say, then the installments no longer apply, and that the full DC in terms of the amount remaining is due. So I guess what all this means is there's no need to amend the draft bylaw, because that loophole is basically addressed through the legislation. Other than that, no comments received. Thank you.
Okay, and so I guess Gary's concern was that somebody would, benefit from delaying their payments of their DCs and then flip it over to condos and not have any kind of fallback, incurred from that. But now you're saying that the government already provides a way of regulating that, so we don't have to worry about it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No other comments from interested persons. Anybody in attendance wishing to make any comments? Alan?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Any council members have any further questions about these proposed development charge? Nope, seeing none. Well, I'm going to thank everyone in attendance for their input and advise council that we'll consider all comments received when making its final decision. Thank you very much, Nancy. Tom?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody involved in compiling these, because it's good not to see some things going up, although that's happening in the rest of the economy. So I know it was a lot of work from our staff and Watson Associates. So thanks to everybody.
And so council, we have a resolution in front of us that council approve the development charges background study, and that no additional public meeting be required, and that staff be directed to forward the implementing development charges for council's consideration at the March 7th, 2022 meeting. Deputy Mayor Elliott, and seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay, so carried. And now I'm going to ask for a resolution from council to adjourn this public meeting and reconvene the regular meeting. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Well, thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on now to our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have 7.1 regular council minutes, 7.2 drinking water system annual report, 7.3 building services annual report, 7.4 year-end report for fire, motions of support for drainage infrastructure in Ontario, and then Middlesex Center support for Thames Valley District School Board trustee distribution. Anything anybody wants pulled out of there? Ready to, yep, Councillor Patterson?
I just have a question about the fire year-end report.
Go ahead.
I understand that the investigations or inspections were hampered by COVID the last couple of years. What's the plan going forward to ensure that all our high risk and businesses and residents get inspected properly?
I'm going to let CEO Henry answer that, because I think there is a plan in place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Worship. Through you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Patterson. There has been a delay. There was a change in staffing with our partnership with Middlesex manner in this regard. As you'll recall, we entered into a partnership with them in order to do inspections and investigations. There was a changeover during that time. Moving forward, I am in the midst of, it is public knowledge, wrapping up our contract with our current chief, and we're looking by the end of June to have someone else in place that perhaps will be looking at doing investigations in-house as well as our own inspection as well, pending the outcome of that successful.
Any other questions? All right, so looking for a motion to out the minutes of the regular council meeting too. And that can be separate or together? All together, fine. Okay, Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. So now moving on to reports of departments, and I believe the first one is Public Works, Piney Creek Drain Breaches Branches, BNC for abandonment. And Mr. Pitt is on the screen and ready to go, so it's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. We received a request to abandon the 2 branches as outlined in the report. The 2 only benefiting landowners have both signed and made this request. Their intention is to, they're working with Ducks Unlimited, and they're going to create a wetland where a drain once was. So with council's permission to abandon, they can continue with this project. And I can answer any questions.
Well, makes sense to make sure the water doesn't drain away from your wetland. So any questions, Councillor Heeman?
I'd like to make a motion in favor of the recommendation.
And I guess we have 2, we have that the report be received for information and that the request submitted by the drainage superintendent be received and adopted, and that requirements under section 84 of the Drainage Act be undertaken.
Yeah.
So moved. Okay, seconder, Councillor Hunter, all in favor? Did you have a question, Councillor Patterson, or is it just the delay?
Yeah, I think there's a little delay. I was in favor.
Okay, no problem. I'll count for it next time. Thanks. All right, moving on now to, thank you, Travis. CS 00122, the Thorndale Lions Community Programming Survey. And Steve, you ready to take this report?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. The report before you provides a summary of the data collected from a survey on programming for the Thorndale Lions Community Center. This survey was launched in November of last year and was available to the public for responses until the end of December. A response was strong, with 112 completed surveys in total. Thanks to continuous promotion on our website and Thames Center social media, along with the survey link being shared by council and other groups on their social media platforms. We use the survey as an opportunity to determine preferred programs by age for specific times of the day, of the week, and of the year. The main findings from the survey results were as follows. Badminton, volleyball, and pickleball were the top 3 activities of interest, with 50% or more of respondents expressing interest in these sports, with the other 3 activities on the survey all receiving 30 to 40% interest levels. The highest demand is for activities in the first quarter of the year, with 100% of respondents looking for something to do from January to March. 80% interest in the fourth quarter, just under 50% interested in second quarter activities, with less than 25% interested in activities over the summer. Weeknights are the greatly preferred time for activities, which of course, unfortunately coincides with the prime time for private rentals as well for the gym, but that's something we always have to deal with and work around. So this report is before you for your information, as it is for my department. We'll be using this to help adjust and tweak what we do offer to the community. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. It's great to get the public input on this and helps you moving forward. Any questions, council? Comments? No, seeing none, a motion to receive this. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Heeman, all in favor? Okay. All right, now GS 00222, fundraising and sponsorship for the new ORC Ball Diamond. Looks like a long report, so we'll settle in and let Mr. McDonald start.
Yes, everyone get comfortable. Through you, your worship. This next report before you is regarding the fundraising and sponsorship plans for the new artificial turf ball diamond at the York, which is budgeted for this year. As council will recall, this past November, the municipality entered into a partnership agreement with Great Lake Canadians regarding the existing ball diamond, along with stipulations that it would encompass the second diamond if approved in the budget, which has happened since then. Section 8.6 of that agreement provides GLC's involvement in fundraising, and that includes specifying that their ability to raise funds for field improvements, their ability to sell field signage advertising as per our fees and charges bylaw, and that section of the agreement also states that funds will be held by Thames Centre for future improvements to the facility, with GLC collaborating with Thames Centre to agree upon how such funds will ultimately be allocated. So since then, staff have worked with GLC to create this proposed fundraising sponsorship program, which is before you today. Besides those terms already covered off in the partnership agreement that I just mentioned, the additional details for this project can be summarized as follows. And it kind of follows along the next 4 parts of the report, with the 4 categories in the attachment. So the first section of the attachment is regarding naming rights. And so for the naming rights of the new artificial turf ball diamond, sponsorship secured by GLC for the naming rights would be a 10-year term. And those that sponsorship fee will cover any and all associated signage costs and recognition costs, with the balance of such funds to be held by the municipality for future improvements to the facility as per the agreement with Great Lake Canadians. Such future improvements would be brought forward to future budgets or by report to council prior to procurement. The second section of the attachment is regarding features that are included in the scope of the project. So these are items that we have already planned for and that are already covered with the budget amount allocated to this capital project. So any donations and sponsorship secured by GLC for these items will cover associated sponsorship recognition costs, with the balance of such funds to be held by the municipality for future improvements to the facility as per the agreement with GLC. And just like the naming rights, any future improvements will be brought forward to either future budget meetings or by a report to council prior to procurement. The third section of the attachment is regarding features not included in the scope of the project. So this is for things that we are currently not planning to do. So for these items, donation or sponsorship secured by Great Lake Canadians will be utilized towards improvements as agreed upon between myself and Great Lake Canadians. The prices set to sponsor add-on features of this nature must cover all costs because we have not budgeted for these items. So in order to purchase any of these items, the sponsorship cost would cover not only the cost of purchasing the item, but delivery, installation, along with any recognition and signage costs. So that's the only way that we would proceed with those items. And as a result, staff are requesting that these fully funded features be authorized to be procured. The attachment for this section only provides one example, benches for the 2 bullpen viewing areas. However, other opportunities will be pursued by Great Lake Canadians under this category as well, such as a scoreboard. And then the final section of the attachment is in regards to 3 other opportunities for donors and sponsors to support the project, which with those opportunities being having their name added to a seat in the VIP seating area, having a plaque on a donor wall, and placing an advertisement on the outfield fence. Donations and sponsorships secured by GLC for these items will be held for future improvements, which will be brought forward to future budget or by report to council prior to procurement. And then just a couple other quick details to cover off regarding this fundraising plan. First of all, any donations or sponsorships other than naming rights secured outside of the fundraising efforts of GLC shall reduce the amount of funding as identified in the 2022 capital budget. Naming rights, if secured outside of the efforts of GLC, shall be reserved for the facility on an annual basis with distribution to be determined during budget deliberations. Secondly, sponsorship payment terms. So for the larger ticket items under the second section of the attachment, if it's for items that are worth $10,000 or more, besides the option of paying in advance completely, they have the option of 3 equal payments over a 3-year term with the first payment due immediately. And so that's for anything 10,000 or more, besides the one that's already stipulating exact payment, which is the foul pools. And then finally, the one other stipulation for the plan is besides the baseball naming rights, baseball diamond naming rights, which is a 10-year term, and the foul pool sponsorship rights, which is a 5-year term, and the outfield fence advertising, which is always a 1-year term, all other sponsorship would endure the life of the related asset, which is important to kind of stipulate so people know in advance how long their sponsorship is good for. And then I'll just finally touch on a few financial implications of this report. In addition to the core project costs covered by the 2022 capital budget approved by council, since then, GLC has generously agreed to fully fund 2 provisional features quoted by the contractor. The first one being upgrading a portion of the bleachers to VIP seating at a cost of $24,153.75, inclusive of non-rebated HST. And secondly, running CIT cable from our existing field house to behind the new backstop at a cost of $3,917.76, inclusive of non-rebated HST. Staff are requesting council approve to procure these items as additional project costs upon written confirmation of the commitment of funding from GLC. And finally, GLC also intends to donate and provide other items that are not included in the core project. Helmet cubbies with bat storage for both dugouts, other cubbies that would be mounted to inside the dugouts for both dugouts, as well as field screens. These donated items, while not a direct cost to the municipality, will become our assets, requiring capitalization as part of the project with a useful life and requiring future replacement. These additional items will be added to the overall cost of the project and will be offset by donation in kind reserves. So then as a result of this report, there are some recommendations, and I can quickly read those over for you. So the recommendations are as follows: that council receive report number CS 002-22 for information, and that council approves the fundraising and sponsorship plan proposed within this report and identified in the attached sponsorship fees schedule, and that staff be authorized to procure features for the new ORC ball diamond project not included in the 2022 capital budget that are 100% funded through donations and sponsorships secured by Great Lake Canadians, and that staff be authorized to procure the VIP seating upgrade portion of the bleachers at a cost of $24,153.75, inclusive of non-rebated HST, and CIT cabling at a cost of $3,917.76, inclusive of non-rebated HST, and that donated items, while not a direct cost to the municipality, will be added to the overall cost of the project and will be offset by donation in kind revenues. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, so I missed that day in acronym school. What is CAT cabling?
What is that? It all sorts of, like, it's cabling that will be used for future
Electronic?
electronic and whatnot. Yeah, like so computer, Ethernet, internet, that sort of stuff.
So, okay, all right, got it. All right, Councillor Heeman.
Thank you for that excellent report, and I think it's great to have all of our wants and needs documented, and I think this is a really good example of how we can do fundraising moving forward. I just wanted one point of clarification. So would it be safe to assume that the fundraising committee is done by the ORC? What is the body responsible for ensuring donations?
Go ahead.
Through the mayor. Yeah, so GLC is going to be a prime driving force for the fundraising. But we will also promote it at a municipal level on our website and social media. And that's why there is some specifications in there. If there is donations received directly by the municipality that GLC didn't bring in, how we would handle those sorts of donations as well.
Okay.
But they'll
So
be the prime driving force. They've got all the connections and a lot of interest already, and people waiting and companies waiting to buy in, which is exciting.
So call Great Lakes or you to drop off a check.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Anytime.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so I'm clear on this, the VIP seating and the cat cabling, which is almost, I guess, $28,000 or so, approximately, that's being covered through donations, or are we spending that on top of the 2022 budget?
Through the mayor. So Councillor Patterson, those are going to be covered completely out of pocket from GLC. So, but we wouldn't, so I'm going to get in writing their commitment just to confirm and finalize, to formalize it before we would proceed with it.
Any follow-up? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Work. And just so we can remind our taxpayers, what's the cost of this project and how are we funding this? Maybe our Director of Treasury can help with that.
0.8 from DC.
All right, here she is. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to all of council. So the project was budgeted at a total cost of $2.8 million. The 2022 capital budget has the project listed as a growth-related project, so it's being 100% funded through development charges.
Okay, any other questions? And just maybe one quick question. So are we calling it ORC or ORC? I just need to know so I can stay current on what's going on, because New Orc does come to mind. That's not, it's a little bit easier to say than new ORC. So just want to double check on that. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it's good either way. I guess ORC is quicker and easier to say.
Okay, all right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recommendations in front of us and council's wishes. Deputy Mayor Elliott, so move. Seconder, Councillor Heeman, all in favor? So carried. Now, I think the next report, to make sure I turn the page. Aha, is IAC 00122, which is the accessible playground proposal recommendation. And Mr. McDonald, this is your topic?
Yes, Your Worship. Okay, through you. My final report before council today is regarding awarding the contract for the design build of an accessible and inclusive playground at Dorchester Park. Thanks to the initial encouragement from the Dorchester Dream Park, consisting of dedicated residents of Thames Centre, and backed up by the support of council and the Accessibility and Inclusivity Advisory Committee, this project was approved as a part of Thames Centre's 2022 capital budget. Proposals from 4 qualified playground companies were received and reviewed by the evaluation committee. This committee consisted of the Accessible Playground Subcommittee, along with myself, Devin Brown, and the county's accessibility coordinator. All proposals were scored on their organizational information and qualities, their proposed design and features, their schedule, their warranty, and their costing, with the weighting of these scores provided to the proponents within the RFP, so they knew exactly how they would be scored. Results from the evaluation committee were presented to the AIAC this past Monday, with the AIAC's recommendation making up an important part of this report. $400,000 is included in the 2022 capital budget for the design and build of the accessible playground. This budget amount will cover a set amount for the core project features and site work independent of fundraising. Any possible additional features over and above the core project are to be 100% fundraised before procurement. This project may also qualify for a grant from Cal Tire to cover a portion of the playground's rubber surfacing. Should we be successful with this grant opportunity, this would reduce the amount of the project required to be funded by the source identified in the municipal budget, which is development charges. As a result, this report is before you with 4 recommendations as follows. That council receive report number AIAC 001-22 for information, and that council approve the recommendation from the Accessibility and Inclusivity Advisory Committee to award RFP-TC-007-22, the design build of the Dorchester Park Accessible and Inclusive Playground, to Open Space Solutions, Inc. for a cost of $328,000 inclusive of non-rebated HST. And that any available budget up to the threshold of $400,000 inclusive of HST rebate as approved by council in the 2022 capital budget be utilized at the discretion of the Director of Community Services and Facilities towards site works and accessibility and safety features, and that the Director of Community Services and Facilities in collaboration with the AIAC be authorized to approve additional features outside of the original scope of the project if the cost of such features is fully funded through sponsorship and or fundraising efforts in advance of procurement. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Great. Well, I just want to say that I do sit on the County Accessibility Committee now, and this coming forward and being discussed at that level, we are the envy of quite a few of the municipalities, and I've had nothing but good comments from those our fellow municipalities about taking this project on and having it in our community. So it's met with great comments and great approval at a different level. So I'm very excited to see this project come to fruition. Yeah, Deputy Mayor Elliott, go ahead.
This all come to life. And I'm just wondering, through you, Director McDonald, are you able to share any of the drawings just so the public can have a quick look as well, knowing that there may still be a few minor tweaks to it, but overall what the playground will look like?
Yes, certainly. I'd love to. Here we go. Hold on tight. Are you seeing it? I don't think you are.
No, we are. We are. Go ahead and
Okay.
start describing it.
Okay. Are you seeing my cursor moving on the screen as well?
You're seeing your cursor.
Okay. So on the left here that I'm circling with the cursor, that's kind of like a ninja warrior obstacle course sort of thing, which was a high demand item and something that's popular right now with playgrounds. And to the right here, you will see the fully accessible portion. On the far right, you will see a ramp leading up to a platform. That platform then leads to a bridge over to this feature, which is called the gondola, which has space for wheelchairs and all sorts of people to sit on that feature. There's another ramp up to a platform that has a couple of slides, and another ramp up towards side-by-side slides as well. And then around the perimeter, you will see different standalone features, which includes different communication boards, which was on the wish list. It includes down here, these are 3 musical instruments, which was on the wish list, a cozy cocoon in the bottom right, which was on the wish list. And then, so this is all rubber surfacing, which is the ideal premier surfacing for safety at playgrounds. And then not pictured on this screen, but also included in the price over to the left is a swing set with various swings, including a big disc swing, which can accommodate people with different capabilities, a full back support swing as well, a baby swing, and then a couple of traditional swings. So for the committee was really pleased, and here's that first portion again, just from the opposite direction. So the committee was really pleased with all the features that this will bring to Thames Centre, and they're pretty excited about it. Now, sorry, the one other thing I'll say as well is the committee also does have a few speaking points when, if council supports the recommendation, when we first meet with the with this company, we're going to discuss a few possible changes to further enhance the accessibility and inclusivity of this, including maybe some features for seniors. So we're not ready, nor do we want to promote these images yet to the full community, but we're hoping within a week or two we can finalize a few little potential changes and then have a final image ready to show. The other thing these images don't show is it just shows green grass all the way around. We'll be working with the successful company in finalizing exactly how close it abuts up to the walking path that will go around it, and any extra little extension paths we have to allow people to get from the walking path to the playground area.
All right. Looks wonderful. Any other comments? Councillor Patterson?
Same question as the last one. How is this $400,000 being funded? Can they remind us of how are we funding this project?
Well, I wish it was $4,000, but I think it's a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and let our CEO answer that question.
400,000, yeah.
I knew what you meant, Councillor. Thank you. Okay, same answer as Kim gave you, and I pointed out this morning was 2 projects that were fully funded from DCs. This is another one of those projects. Sorry, Steve, just thought I'd jump in on you there. I saw you were ready, but yes, again, fully funded from our DCs, and then sponsorship if they will be over and above.
Councillor Heeman?
And I think it's an interesting advantage of being progressive on these fronts. I know we've had discussions about trying to go above and beyond the AODA standards. And I think this is an example where that's paying off because we are providing a significant enhancement, and that's reflected by our ability to use development fees for it. So sometimes it works.
All right. So we have a motion to receive it for information, and then we have 3 other recommendations below us that Steve's gone through. So what are your wishes, Council? Deputy Mayor Elliott?
So moved.
So move. Seconder, Councillor Hunter. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now moving on to the Mayor's report, County Council report. It's been a busy time since our last report. We've had 4 county budget meetings with the recommendations to be presented at the next County Council meeting. February 2nd, I attended a SCORE meeting, and as well as the Middlesex County Planning Introduction to the County Planners. February 3rd, I attended our local CEOs meeting, and February 4th was our last county budget meeting. February 7th, I attended the virtual media briefing about the health unit. That's always interesting to hear the status of what's going on. And February 8th, I was in a SCT transit meeting, and then we had our county council meeting that day. February 9th was the Kettle Creek Full Authority meeting. February 10th was the Conservation Authority meeting. That's run in partnership with the ministry to let us know the updates on the CA Act changes. February 11th, I attended the health unit meeting at 9 from 10 till 2. I was in the Western Ontario Wardens meeting, and at 3 p.m. I attended the SCORE short line rail transit proposal. February 13th, it was my pleasure to attend a ribbon cutting at a new business here in Dorchester, the Sutton Group Preferred Realty. Congratulations. And there's a lot of local people involved with that, and it's a great time to be a realtor. So I'm pretty sure that'll be an exciting new venture. Thank you. And moving on to unfinished business, 10.1, applications for draft plan for subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment, Vista Woods Estates Limited, 2429 Dorchester Road. And Mr. Bancroft, it's all you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. We will all recall that this matter was considered by council back at the November 8th, 2021 council meeting, where my report was considered. I did include at that council meeting verbal amendments to my recommendation. And it's important to note that those verbal amendments have been carried forward in writing through the current council agenda, through the recommended amended motion. So what I want to do, Your Worship, is to quickly go through the differences between the two relative to the changes that are being recommended. And there's three altogether. The first one had to do with item E in the original report. I understand that report was also circulated to members of council in advance of this meeting. So item E, with block 45, that's the stormwater management pond, that it be reduced in frontage. Originally, it said 6 meters. We need an increase to 9 meters. And that's because of to ensure sufficient space with being able to maintain the infrastructure. Once the necessary pipes are installed in the ground, we need enough room to be able to dig up the area if and when that happens from a future maintenance standpoint. So that's the first item. The second item is in the original report, item G, which was that a new pedestrian walkway block be created. And as noted by our Director of Community Services and Facilities, there's no need for that block, considering pedestrian access can be provided through that widened frontage of the stormwater management pond. And that is consistent on how we've dealt with pedestrian access with other subdivision developments. The first one that comes to mind would be the Foxborough subdivision in Thorndale. And then lastly, through my original report, item H, that is deleted from the revised amended recommendation. Originally, I was requesting changes to some of the single detached lotting to promote land use efficiencies. But upon further review, I'm accepting of the status quo in terms of those single detached lots, considering there are 3 future development blocks which would offer residential development opportunities at a higher density compared to those low density single detached lots. So as noted in the council agenda, Your Worship, it is my recommendation that we proceed with a recommendation to Middlesex County for the issuance of draft plan approval, subject to refinements A through F to the draft plan, and also that the zoning bylaw amendment, that it be approved in principle, subject to the refinements that are noted in my recommendation, verbatim from my report, and that no further notice be required based on those changes to the zoning bylaw amendment. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, council? Comments? So like a little bit of water's passed under the bridge since we last saw this report. We did defer it, not because of any major concerns, more just for a chance to get council to have our own information, which was done today. And again, thank you to our planning director for his hard work on getting that together for us today. Specific to this, does anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Heeman?
Yeah, I think that this lot had potential for commercial zoning, I understand that this is the proposal put forward by the developer, but it seems like it would be an ideal location for additional commercial, and seeing as we don't have a lot of space left within the traditional boundaries of the urban settlement, I'm just wondering if there's any possibility on that through further discussions on zoning.
Go ahead, Mark.
Through to your worship, thank you. Historically, and this is going back before my tenure and providing planning services for Thames Center, this would have been probably around 2010, somewhere around there. The frontage of the property along Dorchester Road was originally designated for commercial purposes. Subsequent to that, there was an amendment to the official plan, which allowed an opportunity for either commercial development and or medium density residential housing. So what is being brought forth through this current proposal would be consistent with that planning framework. I don't disagree that this site certainly has merit along the frontage of Dorchester Road because of its excellent access and visibility, and being across from the Shoppers Drug Mart Plaza, that this property would lend itself to a commercial opportunity. But at the same time, what Vista Wood Estates is proposing would meet that framework. So I think overall we're pretty much on thin ice if we were to push the envelope. Respectfully, Councillor Heeman, considering that it meets the planning framework. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Elliott?
Yes, through your worship. I guess I'll just say, because it was my motion to defer this to have this visioning session, and that we may proceed exactly how we would have in November, but I think a lot of changes have come down the pipe. The market has changed even since November. I think our visioning session was great and was exactly what I was looking for when we talked about it in November, to see what tools we had, what options we had, how to take that holistic look at growth in Thames Center specifically. And it just came over and over again this morning, is that we need that mixed density housing. That's one of the only tools we do actually have in order to do this. And moving forward, I'm glad we kind of cooled things down and had an overview look at it and today's session, because it was excellent.
Councillor Hunter?
I would just echo Councillor Heeman's comments about the commercial along Dorchester Road, but hearing our planner's comments, I think that ship has sailed, but it's really too bad that has disappeared off the table.
Councillor Heeman?
Just to follow up, I know we talked about a lot of different built forms for if we look specifically at block 44, where it is designated for medium density, is there the possibility of some mixed use so that would allow for some commercial, seeing as there's not a current, there's a planned zoning, but not necessarily planned form at this time?
Through you, your worship, although the official plan provides that designation, it's unlikely that it would happen, considering through the draft plan, there is a requirement for 1 foot reserve across the frontage of Dorchester Road, so that all of the access for that block 44 comes off of the local street. So I don't think that would be appropriate to funnel traffic that would have otherwise accessed the block for commercial purposes. So I think the proverbial ship has indeed sailed. At the same time, with planning, nothing is ever forever. So, there could be a possibility down the road should those lands, block 44, remain vacant for some time, perhaps there could in the future be an opportunity to develop that parcel for commercial purposes, or even with a mixed use component. So.
Yeah, I guess you could consider that a transition zone, right? Where you're coming in and you're seeing residential, but you're also seeing commercial, just like we do on the other side of the river, where there is, a mix of commercial and residential properties.
Yeah, correct, Your Worship. That's a good example. Thank you.
All right. So that was a long time coming. We do have a recommended motion in front of us. Deputy Mayor Elliott.
I'll move the planner's recommendation.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Hunter. Calling the vote, all in favor? And so carried. Thank you. 10.2 is no longer, oh, sorry. Yeah, missed it. So this is the application for zoning bylaw Z1220 by Kirkness Consulting Incorporated on behalf of Vista Woods Estates Limited, be approved in principle subject to the following changes. Block 42 be rezoned to a site-specific R117 zone. Site-specific R3 zone for block 43 and 44 includes reduced front yard and exterior side yard widths of 4.5 meters for the habitable portion of the dwelling and 6 meters for the attached garage portion of the dwelling. Any parkland dedication lands be rezoned to open space with the exception of lands currently zoned environmental protection. And that block 46 be, which are the private gardens and beautiful, I may add, be rezoned to the OS zone, and that all lands to be rezoned for residential purposes be subject to a holding H provision, and further that staff be directed to forward the implementing bylaw for council's consideration once the County of Middlesex has issued a draft plan approval for application for plan of subdivision 39 TTC 20001, and that giving the foregoing zoning changes that no further notice be required under section 3417 of the Planning Act. So Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. 10.2, it does say minor variance, but I believe this is off the agenda now.
Your Worship, I can jump in for a
Yeah.
second.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that, Tina.
It's okay.
Ms. Wiley, the applicant for that variance A23-21, her intention is to make adjustments to the existing building so that it does comply with today's zoning bylaw. So although I don't have a request in writing with her withdrawing her variance application, it's more than likely that this whole thing is just going to fizzle out. So more than likely on future versions of the council agenda, we will essentially remove the item once we've got a formal adjustment to that building, which currently does not comply, but it will comply.
So no minor variance will be needed moving forward.
Correct.
Is that all right with you, Tina? All right, we're all in agreement there. I did miss in the my portion, I did get a letter. I just want to quickly read, sorry to mix up the agenda. And it was from Jeff Urick, MPP, saying, "Dear Mayor Warwick, I am writing to express my sincere congratulations regarding your third funding installment of the Municipal Modernization Program, as recently communicated by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. I'm very proud of the work being done in Thames Center to improve efficiency and modernize service delivery, and send my best wishes for a successful year ahead. Sincerely, Jeff Urick," which I think the one thing I must say that throughout the pandemic that kept happening was the provincial government did send us lots of opportunities to modernize. And I think that's one of the best things that we could have done coming out of this pandemic, was taking that opportunity to do that. Now, it created a lot of extra work, because not only are our staff working on their normal duties, but then the pandemic changed, modified their work, but then there was these opportunities as well. So not only were they working at their normal rate, but then they were working hard to put their heads together, collaborate and partner, and work on getting the funding for these modernization grants. And I just want to say thank you to everyone at this point in time who's been involved, because it's noticeable. It's going to make a big difference moving forward. And You know, you can say what you want about the pandemic, but it really did help people get focused and move some things ahead that we wouldn't have normally done. So kudos to everybody that's involved in that funding. Now, moving on. No notice of motion, no new business. We have some bylaws. And there's a motion that bylaws 9/2022 through bylaw 14/2022 be approved as presented. So looking for a mover, Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconder, Councillor Heeman, all in favor? Okay, our next meeting is Monday, March 7th at 1 p.m. Okay, and now we're looking for a motion to adjourn at 2:30 exactly. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter, all in favor? So moved. Thank you.